welcome everyone to the second session of the Spotlights Let's Talk Online Talk series, and we are happy to have you here. Some of you again, I think you have joined the first session as well, and others for the first time. And we are also really happy to welcome two guest speakers today, Penny Hagen and Eruini, who are doing, I would say, very important transdisciplinary work from my Berlin perspective, at least the other end of the world in Auckland, New Zealand. And I'll say more about our guests in a minute, but first, this online talk series is organized again by the Berlin University Alliance and the Stifterverband in cooperation with the Global ITD Alliance and the German Society for Transdisciplinary and Participatory Research. And I am Josefa Knie and happy to facilitate today's session again, and my colleague Isabel will support me with the chat if necessary. And we have now 1 hour to at first hear a short input of 10 to 15 minutes and me asking some follow-up questions. And then we will have like about 20 more minutes for discussion with you all. So feel free to use the chat at any time if you have a question or thought in your mind. And please, if you would like to, and if you can, switch on your camera so we feel a little bit more like a little community here. That would be nice. And before we start, I would like to know again how international are we today. So please write in the chat, where are you dialing in from today? In Mainz in Germany, in Leipzig in Germany, in Berlin, in Karlsruhe in Germany. So you see, everybody got up really early for you today. Heidelberg, it's also southern Germany, Frankfurt, otherwise Bern in Switzerland, right? So we are quite a German base today, but we also have you in Auckland. That's very nice, and the most important today, I would say. And to begin with, a few words on why we're here today, because this online talk session was initiated by the Laboratory for Transdisciplinary Research at the Berlin University Alliance, which is a partnership that comprises the 3 major universities in Berlin and also the Medical University. And the TD Lab is an infrastructure that is shared by these four institutions and supports researchers in transdisciplinary research by offering professional development opportunities, by providing financial grants, and also providing guidance on how to draft grant proposals. And the TD Lab also works creatively itself. I forgot my slides, I just remembered, but so there's something you have to see while I'm talking about it. And the TD Lab itself also works creatively, as you can see on the pictures, developing formats for co-exploration or for co-exploring socially relevant research topics, and also bringing together scientific and non-scientific experts. And today we have Nadine and Zorka here, who are responsible for the Spotlights project, as well as some other people from the TD Lab team. So wave into your cameras now. It's your time to wave again. And the TD Lab and also this series understands transdisciplinarity as a specific research mode in which scientific knowledge is linked with specialized and with everyday knowledge. So from that view, transdisciplinary research generates knowledge that is both scientifically sound and socially relevant. And today, or this year, the TD Lab is 5 years old, and there were many great and insightful experiences, but also challenges that are faced, such as justifying TD research to academic leaders, to secure long-term funding for supporting transdisciplinary research. And looking at Germany, at least, such structures are often established and funded on a more project-by-project basis without a long-term perspective. So valuable experience, quality standards, networks, knowledge about successful formats of doing TD research and collaboration can easily be lost again. So the TD Lab team asked themselves, okay, how are these challenges actually addressed in other countries? And then had the idea to invite people who are also committed to promoting collaboration between science and societal actors, and to maybe also face similar questions and challenges. So that's why today we want to hear Penny and Eruini from the Auckland Co-Design Lab on these topics. And there are your names. And so you see where New Zealand is. It's quite far off, at least from a Western European perspective. So who are you two? We have Penny Hagen, which is a German name, so I can pronounce it Hagen, who as a person without Maori ancestors is the co-leader of the Co-Design Lab, together with her counterpart Angie, who represents a Maori perspective. And in her work, Penny assists organizations, teams, communities to take a systems-oriented approach to well-being. And she holds a PhD in participatory design, and her work integrates approaches from well-being, health, design, youth development, systems, and evaluation per disciplines. So quite inter-transdisciplinary herself. And she's also part of different policy advising bodies in New Zealand. And we have Eruini Hawke, who was raised on his ancestral lands by land activist grandparents. And he serves as a kaitiaki, which is a cultural guardian protecting Maori land and its living environment. And he has over 20 years of experience in native forestry, restoration, and Maori healing practices. And he's also deeply committed to community service and environmental stewardship. And Eruini's work is essentially guided by Maori principles, which, at least to me, really open up a whole new world, looking into them yesterday to prepare the session. And yes, Maori culture and knowledge are also fundamental to the work at the Auckland Co-Design Lab, where you developed an approach to bring together indigenous knowledge, Western knowledge, and lived experience also in the Auckland region to develop practice-based transdisciplinary evidence to address complex socioeconomic challenges, thus acting as an implementation and a learning partner to government agencies in the Auckland region and beyond also. And yes, at this point, I would love to hand over to you now to tell us more about this specific role you're having and the approach you have towards supporting transdisciplinary research. So I will stop sharing and hand over to you two.
Hi, everybody. Just give me a moment. Going to share my screen. Okay, so while we're waiting for the screen to come up, I'll teach you all just a little bit of Te Reo Māori, the native language of New Zealand. So the first part of the word is kia. Can we all say kia? And the second part is ora.
Kia.
Ora.
Kia
Ora.
ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia
Okay.
ora.
Now, kia ora means to have life. So when I say to you kia ora, I'm saying to you, have life. And another way that we use kia ora is saying hello, saying thank you, saying yes, please, or to say that I'm in agreement with you. So kia ora, everybody.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. So, before we begin our session, we will start with a customary Māori practice, and this practice helps us to arrive fully into the space together. This practice is called karakia. The karakia we are going to listen to was written by Te Mete Lohman. It was intentionally composed in order to ready the mind, the body, and the soul for the work within systems change. In our work here at the Auckland Co-Design Lab, we have learned that systems change and systems return often require us to start differently. Karakia creates a moment of pause, an opportunity to become present and to acknowledge our connections to each other, to place, and to the wider systems we are part of. It helps shift from transactional mindset into a relational one, creating conditions that deeper learning, creating conditions for deeper learning, for dialogue, and for transformation. Please push play, Penny.
Kimihia, kimihia, kimihia ngā tani whātai he tauni nihi. Rongohia tini hokawa e rongohia tini hopi tomata. Matawai ki runga, matawai ki raro. Tēnei te mata take kāia ngā pū, kāia ngā wawata. Koia nei ani hotani ka whakamaua kia te, ka whakamaua kia turuki. Haumi e, hui e, taiki e.
Second slide, please, Penny. So here on the screen, we have the words to that karakia. On the left-hand side, they're written in te reo Māori. On the right-hand side, there's a translation of sorts. It's not a word-for-word translation, but it does help to explain the spirit in which these words and their rhythm are expressed. So what we just listened to, in a sense, was saying we actively seek out those who occupy the many systems. Much of the time, those systems are oppressive and complex. We seek to gain understanding as to what is required intergenerationally and to ultimately unlock one's potential. We must look closely and critically examine the conditions that surround us. Only then will we achieve our aspirations to communicate a change beyond the status quo that is based on our origins and our futures coming together. This is the manifestation of Niho Taniwha. We bite down and clench our teeth as we hold the line for the next generation. Over to you, Penny.
Kia ora. Thanks, Eruini. So thank you for just starting us off how we would normally ground in and laying some of the groundwork and kind of concepts that help us understand our work and kind of guide us in how we undertake it as well. So just want to acknowledge Eruini for that and to thank our hosts for having us this evening / this morning. It's great to be with you. So I will try and do some of the mechanics of the institution, and then we'll come back again to Eruini, who will share a little bit more of some of that underlying understanding of how the world works, which is so fundamental to how we undertake transdisciplinary and collaborative work together. So you had the great intro, thank you very much, about who we are and where we are. This is a way that we visualize kind of the lab. We are much smaller than that little circle there that says the lab shows us. We're actually only 6 people, but we're inside a bigger innovation team that's actually grounded in local government. So our home, our hosting institution is local government and a wider innovation unit that is now actually focused on economic development. So we sit in a really unusual place where we have our feet on the ground in a community in South Auckland, a really diverse community, but the biggest Māori and Pacific population in the Pacific. But we are co-funded by central government. So we kind of say that we have our feet on the ground in community, we're hosted inside local government, but our key partners are our national government partners, our national agencies, central government agencies. And as it says here, we were set up now more than 10 years ago to be a 2-year proof of concept. So we can celebrate that we've managed to survive for an extra 8 years, hopefully another decade longer than that. And we were set up to demonstrate what working differently looked like. And we've really evolved our understanding of what that means. We don't use the terminology co-design actually anymore. And a lot of that is to do with the journey that we've been on around understanding a kind of a return to indigenous knowledge and innovation methodologies and systems methodologies that were already present here in Aotearoa, rather than starting with the kind of Western models that were initially the kind of instigation of the lab. We were funded by a Treasury Better Public Services seed fund. So there was, kind of a lot of different innovation happening in different ways at that time, and the lab was able to secure initial 2-year funding to do what was called some design challenges. And then for the 8 years since that initial funding round, what we had was a range of central government agencies, so our Ministry of Health, Police, Treasury, Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, helping to co-fund a base amount of money that would just fund a small team and a little bit of work, and then we team up with agencies who have a reform agenda to help them deliver on that for the bigger project. So we kind of have a base funding and then project funding. This is our team. We really intentionally reflect a treaty model here. So Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is the founding, or one of the founding documents between Crown and iwi Māori here in Aotearoa. So that is really fundamental to our understanding of our work. Oh, I can see that one of our colleagues has joined us online, Angie, kia ora. And so that co-leadership model, and also the distinct acknowledgement of roles and expertise around Mātauranga Māori in our work. So that's a really core part of how we operate. And then in terms of, well, what do we do? What's our kind of job and role? We talk about being focused at change at systems level, so systems level innovation. We're not looking at interventions for families. That's not what we're interested in, because we don't think that's where the big issues are. We know that the current systems and structures deliver inequity. They were designed that way, and so we're interested in shifting systems so that they create enabling conditions for families, and our focus is the public sector. So we partner with anybody who wants to partner and anywhere where there's influence, but our primary partners are our public sector agencies and local government agencies that have so many levers for families, and they make choices about investment and policy and so many things that shape the outcomes for families. So those are the places that we focus. So we talk about being place-based, but with national influence. And we use this version of the socio-ecological model as a sort of shorthand for saying connected to the ground, but seeing all those layers of influence. So we talk about connecting community know-how with policy and decision-making. So the work is about bringing those realities together. We describe the work as kind of having three modes, three ways of working. And the first one is live lab. So that's doing demonstration work, actual change alongside families, alongside other partners from community and government to say, what does doing differently look like? For example, we've done a lot of work, and our colleague Andrew, who's on the line, has led this for the last 10 years around child wellbeing or tamariki wellbeing. So what's needed in communities and in our policy settings to support families so that children thrive? Because that's what parents set out to do the absolute best for their children. How can we ensure that the enabling conditions around them deliver that? So the projects are about working alongside families and enabling them to lead and tell us what should look different at policy settings or investment settings. And then we translate that with government ideally back into the way things are invested and shaped. And then we keep testing that to develop practice-based evidence. So we're kind of bringing those worlds together. So child wellbeing is a really key area for us. And then another kind of work that we do is not just what, the sort of subject area, but also how. So we really want the public sector to work differently. We want the public sector to understand that the evidence base comes from communities as much as it comes from existing literature or academia. So there's know-how, particularly indigenous know-how, sitting in communities and expertise that is not valued or invested in often. And it's where our answers are. It's where the change is. So this model, the Niho Taniwha, and Eruini started with the karakia that references Taniwha. He's going to talk a little bit more about that. Is a framework that's emerged over our work over the last 6 or 7 years that helps us to connect learning in different places. So across the country, you might have teams and communities doing really awesome stuff, and that could be around child wellbeing. It could be around increasing immunizations in communities. It could be around community-led prevention of sexual violence. And communities are leading the change, but we need the knowledge and insights that they're building to come up into the policy and investment space with government. And so this learning model helps us do that in a live learning process. And so this is just an example from a case study that we've done, or that was led by our Ministry of, it's a New Zealand Health Agency, kind of a Ministry of Health, around connecting government policy and investment to learning in communities. So that's just an example of the kinds of things that we work on, and then the ways in which we're trying to enable change in the public sector. The second thing that we do is package those insights. So how do you then share and codify that learning in a way that others can use it, whether it be about child wellbeing or about the models and practices. So we do a lot of sharing and insight sharing and bringing that practice-based evidence to life. And then we do learning platforms, like how do you get that knowledge out there? How do you share it with people? So communities of practice, networks of practice. This is like the most simplest way that we have ever shaped. So we've got more complex ways of talking about our innovation methodology, but this is the most simple version. And we're basically saying we're bringing together the lived experience or expertise of families with indigenous knowledge and Western knowledge where it's useful. And we're building new forms of knowledge through a values-led or tikanga-led, which is cultural protocol-driven practice. So we're learning and trying things with families in context on the ground, drawing on these different evidence bases. And you can imagine that within these circles, there's many layers and different definitions and things, but those are kind of the three primary if we want to communicate at our most simplest. I'm just going to hand back to Eruini now to put a little bit more depth into some of the indigenous knowledge systems for that, and then we'll hand back to our hosts.
Kia ora, Penny. Thank you. So at the Auckland Co-Design Lab, Mātauranga Māori, or the Indigenous Knowledge Systems of New Zealand, help us to see systems not as a collection of disconnected parts, but as a living network of relationships. It reminds us that people, communities, economies, ecosystems, and future generations are deeply interconnected. Many contemporary systems approaches are now discovering the importance of relationship, emergence, adaptation, and interconnectedness. These principles have long been embedded within Indigenous knowledge systems, where understanding the whole has always been as important as understanding the individual parts. Mātauranga Māori, the Indigenous knowledge systems of New Zealand, offer us a relational worldview. Rather than asking only what is the problem, it encourages us to ask what are the relationships that have been weakened, broken, or overlooked. This shifts our attention from fixing isolated issues to restoring balance and strengthening connections between people, place, and the natural world. In this sense, transformation is not simply about creating something new, but it is more often about remembering, reconnecting, and restoring what has been lost. Indigenous knowledge systems also remind us that we are participants within the system. We are not merely observers standing outside of them. Our actions influence the systems we work in, and those systems shape us in return. This understanding brings with it responsibilities of stewardship, reciprocity, and care. It encourages us to consider not only the outcomes we seek today, as kaitiaki, or whakapapa, which is genealogy, or manaakitanga, which is care. These concepts that place relationships and responsibilities at the center of decision making. Next slide, please, Penny. So on the screen in front of you now, on the left-hand side, depicts two taniwha. One is named Te Pura and one is named Poripori. On the right-hand side, there is another depiction of a taniwha called Pokopoko Whiti Te Rā. So while systems change often focuses on creating new futures, systems return asks a different question. What wisdom, practices, and ways of being have we left behind in our pursuit of progress? Indigenous knowledge systems offer us pathways for returning to relational ways of living and working, ways that recognize our interdependence with one another and with the natural world. Systems return is not about going backwards. It is about recovering the knowledge, values, and relationships that can help us navigate the complex challenges of the future. So in Te Ao Māori, or the Māori worldview, taniwha are often understood as guardians, protectors, and holders of knowledge. From a Western perspective, taniwha are considered mythical creatures. In the Māori worldview, they are not mythical. They are as real as you and me. While their forms and stories differ from tribe to tribe, They frequently occupy places of significance: rivers, lakes, coastlines, mountains, and other important landmarks, serving as reminders of the deep relationships between people, place, and the natural world. The stories of Taniwha carry knowledge accumulated across generations, holding lessons about stewardship, risk, responsibility, identity, and belonging. When we speak about systems return, we are not only looking forward to new possibilities, we are also looking back to the wisdom that has guided communities for centuries. The Taniwha can be seen as symbolic guides in this journey, inviting us to remember knowledge that already exists within our landscapes, cultures, and ancestral traditions. They remind us that solutions do not always need to be invented from scratch. Often they can be found by reconnecting with the wisdom that has been carried through generations. In this way, the Taniwha represent more than a story or a myth. They embody a living relationship with knowledge itself. They encourage us to pay attention to the voices of our ancestors, the teachings embedded in place, and the patterns that have sustained communities over time. Systems Return asks us to seek guidance from these sources of wisdom, recognizing that the knowledge we need to navigate the future may already exist within the relationships, stories, and traditions that have endured through the past. One of the greatest contributions Mātauranga Māori and indigenous knowledge systems offer the field of systems change is the reminder that relationships are not a feature of the system, they are the system. When we strengthen relationships between people, communities, cultures, and the environment, we create conditions for lasting transformation. In many ways, Systems Return is a return to relationship. Kia ora, I would kindly like to pass it back to our hosts, please.
Yes, thank you very much for this horizon expanding presentation of your work and your approach to do community-based work and support decision making. And I suppose there are many questions, so if you have a question, maybe you can put it in the chat so we can sort the questions later. But I would like to open the discussion with one question myself, because you're in contact with so many different institutions and also communities across the country. So I would also, to broaden the horizon a bit, would like to ask, what does the current landscape of transdisciplinary or collaborative research look like in Aotearoa or in New Zealand? And are they like other institutions like yours in other regions in the country? And how well would you say is transdisciplinary research integrated in scientific institutions? So you haven't really used the term, but maybe you can also say something about the term and how the situation looks like in your country.
Awesome, thank you. I'll jump in. Thanks, Eruini, for that grounding for us. I think, what I will say is I'm not an expert on the state of transdisciplinary research in Aotearoa, so there'll be lots of things happening that we're not exposed to. I would say it's kind of, we're probably at a time of change in terms of the institutional fabric at the moment here. But there is a lot of really interesting interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary work happening. From our perspective, the most interesting is always going to be work that's bringing together indigenous knowledge and different streams and figuring out how do we bring those spaces together, particularly around the environment and around complex issues and climate and things like that, where we're really drawing on the widest forms of understanding and knowledge and history. So there's a lot of really powerful work like that happening here. And I think, so for us, we're really unusual and I don't think that there is a comparable institution here anyway, just particularly because we live inside a local government, but we partner with central government, whereas most central government, like innovation labs or research labs, live inside a government agency. And that the fact that we live in this other part of the public sector ecosystem has enabled us to do some collaborative work that's really hard for others to do because we are in this kind of semi-neutral space. So at one ministry, it's hard for one ministry to invite other agencies and ministries to come and partner with it. But when you've got a middle space and you can invite everybody in. So that's enabled us, that sort of neutrality has enabled us to facilitate and convene in a way that's hard for others to do because they look like they have a different kind of stake in it. And in the same way where we would have amazing leading not-for-profit, sector-based teams that really want to do amazing collaborative research, but it's also hard for them to convene because they have a stake, an investment, and a financial stake in service delivery. So the space that we occupy is quite unusual. And at the same time, we therefore have like multiple accountabilities. So we want the rigor of our work to stand up against for community. We want them to look at what we do and say, yes, the way you hold our knowledge and share and work with us is rigorous. We also want that to be academically comparable, and then for ministerial evidence and things like that. So the space that we're in is unusual in that sense, but there is really excellent other like interdisciplinary cultural worldview work happening. I would say one of the most topical things for us is around cultural knowledge sharing, cultural appropriation, and data sovereignty. So that's where the most contemporary negotiation is happening about evidence and who owns it, and who gets to share knowledge, who gets to decide, whose is it to share, because so that's like a territory that I think is very much one that is really strong here at the moment, and it's accelerated by AI, right? So I don't know, Eruini, if you want to add anything to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your answer. And I would like to, give the opportunity to everybody in the room to ask questions. So maybe we take a moment so you can write your questions or thoughts also in the chat, and then we will ask you. Or Tobias, you can also say something.
Yeah, first, thank you very much for this presentation. It did touch something very deep in me, this relational approach to engage with people, with the environment as well. I still have to sort many things now in me. I have one question. This very rich approach, are you also approached in teaching capacity building in the University of Auckland? And if so, how, or how is it connected with kind of the capacity building system?
Eruini, do you want to give some examples of some of the things that you've done with the university, but also like some of the other, I think we've done, like you've probably been involved in a couple of different capability building things.
Kia ora Tobias. So I'm very fortunate to have grown up in Auckland City, and my tribe are the indigenous people of Auckland City. And so when Auckland University was establishing itself, they had the conscience of mind to reach out to my tribal people to form a relationship. And through that relationship, we've been able to identify key landmarks that fall within the Auckland University's campus and assist them and advise them in building what's known as a marae. Now, a marae is traditionally a fortified stronghold for a tribe. In a modern context, it's now utilised as a space where Māori and non-Māori can gather together and share their genealogy, their background, their expertise in whatever field they're studying in or researching in. And that's been a really important process for my tribe and for Auckland University in terms of pulling together Western knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, in order to cater to the variety of students that attend those universities. If we fast forward, that was in the time of my parents and my grandparents. If we fast forward to now, I've had the fortune again to participate in various lectures, sharing systems change and systems return with other students who were studying design and wanted to view different ways of learning, exploring, and sharing ideas within systems change. He kōrero tau, Penny?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so we would try and weave in to as much opportunities to share within the teaching system, but we also try and, in addition to that, where there's quite a few partnerships around how evidence. So that, for example, where the university is running, there's a longitudinal study here around growing up in New Zealand, it's called. So they've been collecting data from families and children. They're up to this is the 15-year mark. So they've just done a collection with young people and parents of 15. So we partner with them, for example, when we're on our child wellbeing work, like what can their evidence and data tell us? What can we share back to them? And then also, Ange is texting me to say, can you say something? So I'm going to ask her if she can just unmute and then she can jump in. This is our colleague and co-lead rather than me channeling. Why don't you jump in, Ange?
Oh, kia ora koutou.
Put you on the spot, mate.
Yes. I just want to say, I just total quit everything Penny and Eruini saying, and so nice to be online with you. I just wanted to say that what we're trying to build is capability at the community and whānau level, not just the academic level. So we're trying to figure out how we shift power, right? And that has to happen for people in place and them telling their story and the stories of place. So I just wanted to raise that as a key learning for us, which is it's not just about shifting how academic institutions view it, but that's really important. And we're in that conversation right now with some of the academic institutions, and Eruini's just talked to that, but we're also trying to figure out how you build the capability for families in place to understand the importance of how the perceptions of data make they inform the decisions that we make. So it's not just about academic institutions for us. What we're trying to do in this work is we're trying to collapse the distance between people who are experiencing the most inequity with the people who have the most power, system power. And so what we're trying to figure out is how we do that. We build the capabilities for people to do that at the same time. So we're trying to do that at all spaces and all levels of the system. And it's really, really, really important for us to try and reverse engineer the way decisions are made here in Aotearoa, because often those decisions are made quite far, they're removed from the people and their lived experience. And so I just wonder how we understand that collapse of distance between those who are experiencing the most inequity in our lands and those that have the most power, system power. And so I just thought that was an interesting thing to give to the discussion, is that it's not just about academic institutions, it's about how we're building capabilities, horizontal and vertical, for people to be able to understand in our experiences that whānau families in place, they often, they've got so much going on, they don't understand how they can influence power and decision making, and it's really powerful when they can be when they're able to understand how that can work and they can participate in that. So thanks for that, Penny. Hope that's not a...
Thanks, Em. Sorry for putting you on the spot. Andrew's also in the middle of doing a PhD, so we're infiltrating academia by having different folks from the lab, like bringing different things in like that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you for adding that layer, and especially that work is important in times of fake news and disinformation, right? So I think you're also contributing to that by giving knowledge about what evidence is and how data is used. So Annette, you're next up line, and then 2 questions in the chat and then 1 hand also. So yes, Annette.
Yes, thank you for these impressive presentations. I really love your approach in balancing this in-place learning, collective learning, and then the systems application. I'm really, really impressed because I think this is exactly what is needed. And when I see my sector, we work in public engagement and very much between cities and universities as institutions, also on a governance level. We also use storytelling as a way to navigate complexity. So not just as a way of, oh, let's all be kind to each other, but to really take this knowledge, seeing things as a quest, as a search, as meeting people, as being able to meet conflicts and then return in a transformed way. So I absolutely loved so many things you said, like this place-based learning connected to national decision making. I think this is absolutely relevant, and I think we should all listen much more to what you guys are doing. My question is, what we see is that there is a willingness of the community of early career researchers with whom we work a lot to take up all these things. They love it, they embrace it, and they feel it's opening up more than just knowledge. It's opening up their relationships to the world around them. So they embrace it. But this system, the governance in both universities and cities, they're quite similar. They have a different definition of excellence. And I keep coming back to this again and again, because I see this as a fundamental barrier to all these things. And my question to you would be, have you seen these things, that the existing understanding of excellence based on individual careers, publications, hierarchic, patriarchic, we all know the story. So they are born and raised this way. They don't see it as part of their excellence. Have you seen that? And if so, what are you doing to meet this, to open them up, to embrace what you are doing as something that's relevant for them as well?
That's a great big question. Thank you for that, Annette. I mean, there's absolutely sort of very hardwired, embedded institutional behaviors and incentives and realities that we're navigating all the time. I think probably my short answer would be building coalitions of the willing over time, but keeping people networked. So we kind of, the way that we've been working has helped us shift from individual capability to system capability. So we're trying to make sure that there's enough sustained network of practice in doing the work and in sharing the work, that when people move in and out of positions of influence, the thing doesn't stop, because that's what happens, right? You get a really great, and this is not foolproof, but you get an enabling leadership and you can do a whole bunch of things, and then one person changes and suddenly you've lost all this momentum. So the ways that that Niho Taniwha structure and learning process have been set up is to try and have multiple points in the system and sustain that over time, enough so that there's resilience. And it doesn't mean that we're managing to flip the switch on some of those really tightly held institutional structures, but we're definitely getting gains in some places where there's a really clear requirement to operate differently, and then we just try and lasso that momentum, if you like. Eruini, did you want to add anything to that, or speak to one of the questions in the chat maybe?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Eruini has already answered another question, so but I will just repeat it, because Ina was asking that mutual understanding between different knowledge systems has to be established somehow, and if there are specific translators or method for doing that and to create a deeper understanding towards each other. And Eruini, you've already answered in the chat that you agree and you do have these translator roles, and that you're also working a lot of based on values and identifying common values that are held within different knowledge systems and to align them. Is there something you want to add to that? A concrete example, or is that?
Yeah, kia ora. So oftentimes in my experience with this work, especially in the environmental space, Māori knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems, would recognise things like stewardship, things like reciprocity in our relationship as human and the natural existing world. And in environmental care from a Western perspective, those values would often align. And it's really important to find that alignment and that common ground and understanding those values in order to get us all on the same page for the tasks that's before us. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been challenges or conflicting understandings of what is more valued. But in saying that, one of the key things that I remember to hold on to from my indigenous knowledge systems is that every person brings a value. Every person holds within them a genealogy and a knowledge system that is ancient. And if we can do the hard work of exploring what yours and my knowledge systems entail, I have this overwhelming confidence that we'll find a middle ground for understanding. But it just takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of looking within, and it takes a lot of allowing space to be left open for others to enter and do the exploration as well.
Thank you. Beautifully said. We have 2 more questions, and I have the last question. So maybe short questions, short answers. So Chantal asked whether whether you encounter local conflicts also on various topics when collaborating and bringing people together, and if so, how do you handle them? Yeah, that's the first question. Maybe a short answer to that.
Yeah, I would just sort of build on what Eruini just said. I mean, inevitably there's conflict, and oftentimes that's because historically the system has put people in conflict. So, for example, a funding system is competitive. So you have a whole group of people that are in an ecosystem, in a neighborhood, or in a, a part of a city that all care about children, but the way that funding works means that they've been competitive historically. So the system will have created forms and relationships and competition. So we go in understanding that this is the system has kind of constructed a lot of violence, actually lateral violence within it. But a journey approach, which is one of the methodologies that we use, it's another one, Hautu Waka, which is around navigation and Pacific navigation. If you take that approach, there's language within that to help you name what's happening. And that's really useful for us. So we're seeing ourselves on a journey. We're seeing people in different states of understanding or clarity, or and when people can kind of start to use that language or see each other in relationship in that way, you kind of know, oh, we're at a really tricky part, but that's okay, because after tricky part comes, you navigate to the next kind of phase. So seeing it in that context has been helpful for us. And we also just draw on as many tools as we possibly can to support that kind of clearing and airing and naming of when there's a structural conflict, not a personal conflict.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to put together the last 2 questions because Nadine wanted to know how you look into the future. So do you think your funding or the funding for work like yours is secure for, let's say, the next 10 years, and how much support to receive from the government now and in future? And Lena's question is fitting quite well, because she said now in Germany we're facing massive cuts at the moment, and especially things like collaborative work are cut, and how the situation is within your country. So I think that both fits together. You can answer it in one answer, maybe.
I wish I could say come here and it's completely different, but we face very similar challenges in terms of the, it's a very fiscally constrained environment right now. Absolutely. And that has had a lot of impact and on the public sector, but also on the research infrastructure and funding. So it's definitely a time of wanting to try and support people as much as possible, and where there is kind of effort and energy to be had, make the most of it. I don't think there's ever anything such as secure funding. It doesn't, so we always just are grateful for the privilege that we have of working as we do, and try and continue for as long as we can. But yeah, the environment here is fiscally constrained, very much so in a similar way in terms of reductions and downsizing and removal of more historic research funding, I'm afraid to say.
Okay, you're so at the other end of the world from my perspective, but still the word is the same. That's very disappointing. There are two more questions and thoughts in the chat that I would have to jump over now. But I think, Angie, you also put that important remark down that colonization always creates tension in a way of talking to indigenous peoples, which is like a very important thing to say, and which is also very essential to your work of trying to unite different perspectives. And the last question maybe here, which we are asking, or we want to ask everyone. So if there would be one thing, Penny and Eruini, that other support structures could learn from your approach, what would that be? Maybe there's something in a few words you could say that everybody can take away from your approach.
You go first, Eruini.
Beautiful question. Thank you. I have learnt so much from sitting and observing our natural world. Being on the top of the mountain, watching the birds, their patterns, observing the clouds, how the trees interact with the birds, how the bugs interact with the trees, how the wind affects that whole environment, and then dipping down deep into the valleys and examining the rivers and being in the water, sampling the water, looking at the life that exists in there. I've learnt so much from just sitting and observing nature and the cycle of the natural state of the world, and it's influenced how I observe my own cycle and my own rhythms within myself, and how I relate to the natural world more keenly, more intimately, when I recognize that I'm a part of this system. Now, of course, I've never been to Germany. I don't know what the landscape is like there. But I like to think that as humans, we can all connect into our natural environment and utilize the signs and the symbols that present themselves from the animals, from the creatures, from the oceans, the rivers, the mountains, the trees, in order to bring us back to ourselves, bring us back to a space of balance, and sometimes that balance shifts and then it recalibrates, and understanding that when that happens, it's okay. Sometimes we feel a little bit, off balance, but returning back to those cycles and those systems that exist in our natural world allows us, or allowed me, to accept that when that balance is out of whack, something needs to be addressed, something needs to be observed or listened to, in order to bring us back to balance. So engage with the natural environment is my final answer. Kia ora.
Thank you. Penny, anything you would like to add?
I would just, like a tiny sliver of that is just giving space for people to pause, and like Eruini said, come into themselves, and sometimes that can make all the difference for how people then are able to open into a new conversation. So starting differently, but giving oxygen and space for people to be in themselves and then start to connect. Like, can be very basic, just one moment of pause.
Thank you. Before you maybe have a moment of pause now, I would just would like to tell you that we'll have another session tomorrow. But first, I want to really thank you, Eruini, Penny, and also Angie for adding. Thank you very much for taking us on that journey into the Auckland Co-Design Lab and your approach into integrating various knowledge systems and communities, which is very insightful, especially having another history or ancestry here in Western Europe or in Germany. And yes, also thank you for the TD Lab for making that event possible. And we would be really glad if you spread the word about that series. We have 7 more talks coming up in the next few weeks. And tomorrow on June 18, we'll meet again here to hear from Uli Filsmeyer about the Responsive Research Collective that works internationally and also interculturally to promote transdisciplinary approaches. So if you would like to join that session, don't forget to register. And yes, thank you all. Stay in the conversation and come to the next talks. And yeah, thanks again, Penny and Eruini, for the insights. Have a great day or
Thank you
good
for having
night.
us.
Bye. Thank
Kia ora,
you.
everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.